Two brothers just declared war on each other, a queen just called herself a prophecy made flesh, and a princess just fell to her death trying to escape her own home. This is House of the Dragon Season 3, Episode 8, and it is the darkest, most devastating finale this show has ever given us. The episode carries the title, The Red Sowing, in spirit, but earns a different name entirely once you watch it unfold, because betrayal is the actual engine driving every single plotline this hour. Almost every major character switches sides, breaks a promise, or turns on someone who trusted them, and by the end, the body count on both sides is staggering. This episode had one job: end the season on a gut punch, and it absolutely delivers one. We open in King's Landing, where Rhaenyra is spiraling the moment she learns Aegon II is alive, mobile, and back in the sky on Sunfire. Her reaction isn't composed queen energy, it's raw panic, because she immediately assumes every lord who was ever loyal to the Greens is about to rally behind him now that he's resurfaced. She's convinced her claim to the throne is crumbling in real time, and that fear becomes the emotional engine for almost every decision she makes for the rest of the episode. Daemon, meanwhile, is suited up in his dragon armor and practically vibrating with the need to fight. He spent this entire season cooped up in the Red Keep while everyone else rides into battle, and watching him finally get cleared to lead an army against the Hightowers feels less like strategy and more like him finally getting to exhale. Daemon tries to talk Rhaenyra off the ledge by reminding her that, numbers-wise, they still hold the advantage in dragons. It's a strong argument on paper. Dragons win wars in this universe, and right now the Greens simply don't have as many riders as the Blacks do. But this reassurance sets up one of the episode's most brutal ironies, because by the final act, that dragon advantage is going to unravel in ways nobody at this meeting could have predicted. Rhaenyra, still shaken, throws blame at her late father for ever naming her heir and burdening her with his obsession over an ancient prophecy that nobody else seems to take seriously. That prophecy, the one about a coming darkness in the north that only a unifying ruler can stand against, becomes almost a second character in this episode. She brings it up again and again, and it's clear she's starting to believe she's not just fighting a war for a throne, she's fighting to fulfill destiny itself. The two of them slip into High Valyrian for a private moment, which this show tends to save for scenes carrying real emotional or political weight, and it works here because it separates their inner circle conversation from the noise of everyone else around them who can't understand a word of it. That detail becomes important later, when Rhaenyra tries this same language on people who have absolutely no idea what she's talking about. Before Daemon leaves for battle, Rhaenyra makes a decision that looks smart on the surface. She assigns two of her strongest dragon riders, Hugh Hammer and Ulf the White, to guard the dragon pit in the capital in case Aegon tries a sneak attack while Daemon is away. It sounds airtight. It is anything but. Both men end up nowhere near the dragon pit by the time the episode ends, and their absence from that post becomes a quiet but very real problem hanging over the start of next season. Before Daemon rides out, Rhaenyra gives him a directive that reveals just how tightly she's trying to control her own image. Burn the Hightowers if you must, but don't turn the small folk against her by killing innocents in the process. It's a warning that immediately feels doomed, because we already know from how this war has gone that clean, contained violence basically doesn't exist in this show, and children end up caught in the crossfire before the episode is over regardless of anyone's intentions. Then comes one of the sharper character confrontations of the season. Baela pushes back hard against Rhaenyra, first trying to insist she should be the one riding to save her grandfather Corlys at Tumbleton, and then calling Rhaenyra out directly for how coldly she's been treating the people around her since Jace's death. It's an uncomfortable scene because Baela isn't wrong. Rhaenyra has become so consumed with proving her legitimacy as queen that she barely reacts to anything happening to the people who actually love her, and this moment plants the seed for just how isolated she is about to become by the episode's final minutes. Rhaenyra's response, gripping Baela's face in a moment that reads as almost threatening, shows a queen who is losing her grip on patience as fast as she's losing her grip on the war itself. Meanwhile, Alan is dealing with his own complicated position, managing new Valyrian-aligned troops while also asserting his claim as Corlys' heir to High Tide, a detail that matters more than it seems on the surface because it sets up exactly how much is riding on Corlys' survival for multiple characters at once. Across the map at Tumbleton, the Hightower forces are digging in. Ormond has surrounded the city with a massive ring of fire trenches, a defensive tactic clearly meant to slow down any advancing army, Blacks included. He knights his younger brother Daeron in a formal ceremony using the Hightower ancestral Valyrian steel sword, an honor that instantly raises Daeron's profile and status heading into the coming fight, giving him a real claim to heroism the moment battle actually starts. Not everyone at Tumbleton is feeling honorable, though. In the kitchens, Ulf the White is deep into a bottle, loudly mocking Demon behind his back and openly plotting how he might turn the tide of the battle if the right opportunity presents itself. He's already been promised a lordship by the Hightowers in exchange for turning against the Blacks, and the way he's talking, drunk, arrogant, and clearly underestimating what he's about to unleash, sets up one of the single most consequential betrayals of the entire episode. Nobody in that kitchen realizes it yet, but the seeds of a city-wide inferno are being planted right there over cheap wine and empty boasting. Back in the Red Keep, Rhaenyra retreats alone to study her father's crown, sitting near the model of old Valyria that's occupied that chamber since the show began. It's a quiet scene, but it says everything about where her head is right now. She's not thinking about strategy or her army, she's thinking about legacy, about whether the Targaryen dynasty survives her or crumbles the same way the Valyrian freehold once did. That fear of historical failure, of being remembered as the queen who lost everything, is clearly eating at her more than she lets anyone see. That private moment gets interrupted with grim news about Helaena. She still isn't eating, and her health, along with the health of the child she's carrying, is deteriorating fast. It's a warning that should stop Rhaenyra cold, but she barely reacts. She's laser-focused on getting the High Septon to formally anoint her at the September in front of the smallfolk, and everything else, including her own sister-in-law's well-being, has become background noise. It's a small moment, but it's one of the clearest signs yet of how far Rhaenyra has drifted from the version of herself we met back in Season 1. Then Rhaenyra makes a move that surprises everyone around her. She banishes Mysaria from the Red Keep entirely, ordering her onto a ship bound for Pentos with a clear message never to return. After seasons of Mysaria whispering advice into her ear and shaping half her decisions from the shadows, this feels like Rhaenyra trying to cut away anyone she suspects of manipulating her, even if that person helped her more than she's willing to admit. It's a decision made from paranoia as much as strategy, and it costs her one of the sharpest political minds she had left in her corner. While all this plays out, Helaena is falling apart in the Godswood, visibly broken and alone. She crosses paths with Mysaria's departing carriage just as the exile is happening, and Mysaria, clearly bitter about being cast out, doesn't hold back. She tells Helaena that Aegon is alive, that he still has Sunfire, and that Rhaenyra will never let her or her son go free, that they'll remain hostages for as long as this war continues. For someone already teetering on the edge, hearing that she and her child are permanent political prisoners with no real future is devastating, and it's the moment that pushes Helaena from despair into desperation. Over in Harrenhal, Aemond is spiraling through nightmares, hearing Aegon's screaming voice echo through his dreams again, the same disturbing visions that have haunted him all season. Alice Rivers is there to steady him, and their conversation turns into one of the richest lore drops of the entire episode. She tells him her own story, revealing she was once part of the noble bloodline that ruled Harrenhal generations ago, before Aegon the Conqueror burned the castle and nearly wiped out her entire family using Balerion the Black Dread. Desperate to save her dying son afterward, she turned to every form of magic she could find, eventually striking a bargain that saved her life but left her cursed to never die, bound forever to the land within the Old River Kingdom. It reframes her entire presence on the show, transforming her from a mysterious background figure into someone carrying centuries of grief and unnatural survival. Back in the Red Keep, Rhaenyra finds Helaena working at a large tapestry, one she's been weaving all season that appears to hint at future events in ways nobody around her fully understands yet. Rhaenyra forces her to eat, physically pushing food on her while Helaena tries to explain that their father would be horrified to see his children treating each other this way. It's a brutal, uncomfortable scene, made worse by the fact that Helaena isn't entirely wrong. Viserys spent years avoiding hard decisions that might have prevented exactly this kind of family collapse, and both his daughters are now paying the price for choices he refused to make while he was alive. At Tumbleton, Gwaine and Daeron are grappling with the horror of what Ormond is planning, using children as a defensive line along the city walls, banking on the idea that Daemon's forces won't be willing to kill kids to break through. It's a cruel but calculated strategy, designed to either stop the attack outright or turn public opinion against Rhaenyra if the children die anyway. Gwaine, clearly disturbed by the plan, starts pushing for a diplomatic solution instead, hoping he can broker peace before any of it becomes necessary. Back in King's Landing, Rhaenyra has her first real conversation with her son Joffrey in what feels like ages, formally telling him he is her heir now and beginning to pass down the same prophecy her father once gave her, the story of a king who dreamed of ice and darkness sweeping down from the north long before any of this war began. It's a heavy moment, watching this prophecy get passed to yet another generation, especially a child who barely seems to grasp what's being placed on his shoulders. At Tumbleton, Gwaine makes his move, trying to convince Daemon to accept a peace deal that would split the realm in half, letting Daemon rule the south while Rhaenyra's rivals keep the north, avoiding a bloodbath altogether. Corlys backs the plan, arguing that no realm will ever fully accept a woman ruling alone, a callback to the very argument that cost Rhaenyra the throne years earlier at the Great Council. But Daemon isn't interested in peace. He wants total victory, and when pressed about what he actually wants out of this war, he admits it plainly. He wants every Hightower dead and a new Valyrian empire built from the ashes. It's a chilling admission, and it makes clear that reasoning with him was never going to work. Corlys is taken prisoner for even suggesting the deal, branded a traitor in Daemon's eyes for trying to negotiate peace instead of pushing for total war. Back in Harrenhal, Aemond is jolted awake by real screaming this time, not a dream. Aegon has actually arrived on Sunfire, and the two brothers finally come face to face after everything that's happened between them. It's a raw, stripped-down confrontation, two brothers who nearly destroyed each other now forced to sit in the same room and reckon with it. Aemond admits he was jealous, that he wanted Aegon gone, that he let his resentment shape every decision he made. Aegon, surprisingly, doesn't retaliate with violence. He calls Aemond a usurper for taking the throne while he was missing, but he doesn't kill him. Instead, he lays out what happens next. Their younger brother Daeron is being held up by the Hightowers at Tumbleton as their new figurehead, and Aegon intends to go set the record straight and reclaim what's his. Alice Rivers watches the whole exchange with quiet fascination, and Aegon even acknowledges her as Aemond's betrothed, a strange, almost tender note in an otherwise tense reunion. Whatever happens next between these three is clearly being saved for the next chapter of this story, but the pieces are now very much in motion. Back at Tumbleton, Daemon rallies his forces before the walls, delivering a speech that lands completely differently than the one Rhaenyra gave back in the capital. His army is fired up, ready, hungry for this fight in a way that makes it clear morale is not his problem. The attack begins, dragons providing cover while ground troops storm the city, and for a moment it looks like this could be over fast. Then everything falls apart. Ulf the White, drunk on wine and promises of a lordship, finally makes his move, climbing onto Silverwing and turning the dragon against the very army he was supposed to be fighting for. Vermithor breaks loose without his rider, since Hugh Hammer has abandoned his post entirely to search the burning city for his wife instead of holding the line. What was supposed to be a clean, decisive victory turns into total chaos, dragons fighting dragons, soldiers caught in fires they can't escape, and two small children frozen in fear directly in Daemon's path who somehow survive only because he chooses, in the middle of all this violence, not to kill them. The ground battle turns just as brutal. Daemon finds himself locked in a vicious sword fight against one of Ormond's strongest fighters, both men wielding Valyrian steel, and the fight is close enough that Daemon nearly loses an eye before it's cut short by the surrounding chaos. Meanwhile, Ormond Hightower meets his end not by Daemon's hand, but by Ulf's, burned alive by the very dragon he thought he had secured loyalty from, a brutal reminder that betrayal in this war runs in every direction, not just toward the Blacks. By the time Daemon gets his bearings, huge sections of Tumbleton are engulfed in flame, and the devastation around him is enough to visibly shake even someone as battle-hungry as he's been all season. Corlys, finally freed from the fighting, convinces Daemon it's time to leave the city behind, the victory such as it is no longer worth what it's costing. Back in King's Landing, the episode reaches its most devastating turn. Helaena, pushed past her breaking point by everything Mysaria told her and the crushing hopelessness of her situation, tries to escape the Red Keep by climbing down from her window using the very tapestry she spent the season weaving. It isn't long enough. She falls, and the injuries are fatal. The show is careful not to frame this as a suicide in the way it's often remembered from the books. It plays instead as a desperate, doomed attempt to escape a life she felt completely trapped inside. Either way, the result is the same, and it's one of the most gutting losses the show has delivered yet. Rhaenyra returns to the Red Keep still riding the high of her speech to the small folk, genuinely believing she's won over the people, only to be told that Helaena is dead. Her reaction is muted, almost eerily controlled, and it says everything about how far she's drifted from the people around her that even this loss barely seems to register before she turns back toward the throne room, back toward the crown, back toward the only thing that still feels like it matters to her. It's a quiet, chilling final image, a queen so consumed by the fight for legitimacy that she can't even fully process the death of her own sister-in-law standing right in front of her. By the time the credits roll, almost nothing about this war looks the way it did at the start of the episode. Alliances have shattered, dragons have turned on their own riders, a city lies in ashes, and one of the show's most tragic characters is gone. Both sides claimed they were fighting for the realm, for peace, for the right ruler to sit the throne, but what this episode makes brutally clear is that nobody involved in this war is walking away from it clean. The cost keeps climbing, and the people paying it are rarely the ones making the decisions. This finale didn't just close out the season, it completely reset the stakes heading into whatever comes next, and there are still so many threads left hanging: Aegon and Aemon's uneasy truce, Darren's fate at Tumbleton, what happens to Hugh Hammer now that his betrayal is public, and how Rhaenyra reacts once the full weight of everything she's lost finally catches up to her. If you've been following this story from the beginning, you already know Season 4 is going to have a lot to answer for. If this breakdown helped you catch details you missed the first time through, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow. Subscribe if you want the deepest, most detailed breakdowns of every episode the moment they drop, and drop a comment below with a moment from this finale that hit you the hardest. I read every single one, and I want to know what you think happens next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next breakdown.